Hello everyone, Maurice here, and today there's finally some more new changes with the Axie Infinity Origins, and there's a massive patch coming on the 3rd of January. Without further ado, let's just jump into it. I would say the key changes, of course, there are a lot more changes, and you can actually, of course, follow. There's a link in my blog post that actually goes to the official full changelog, but I'm just going to highlight the key parts and to, of course, also try to keep this video shorter. So let's just jump into it. The first one really is about a cap of 18 turns for every game. So now basically at turn 18, they will just deal 9999 damage to all axes, and so every game will end at 18 turns, and that's good is because both for pro players and casual players, because it just makes the games faster. You don't have to have very long games that drags on, so makes it just a better player experience. And the other thing in terms of the theme is really that I feel like there's quite a bit more RNG. Of course, really only a few cards or a few mechanics that introduce a bit more RNG, but there is a bit more RNG in the game, which of course is good for casual players, just more fun, but of course it decreases the consistency and might be bad for pro players. And finally, there has been quite a number of new mechanics, and in a way, it's more like a new way to play old things, right? For example, like heal, like shield. They're just adding on more new mechanics to those to make it just more interesting for existing players and returning players to come back and play with the existing axes. Okay, so let's jump into more of the details, really. So Blood Moon, as I said, on turn 18, all axes will lose 9999 HP, meaning the game will end, so that's good. It's still progressive, but the Blood Moon already starts at turn 10, which is good, right? It just pushes everything faster or earlier, so that then the HP reduction will start coming in faster. And of course, with all the buffs in terms of parts evolution, which I'm not going to talk about here, but yeah, so in the next video, I'll talk about more about parts evolution. But well, with all those buffs in terms of the stats and things, the games will just be a bit faster because the power level is really just increased, I would say. And then, okay, so next part, this is another new mechanic, Boak and Guard. I'm not going to go through it too much. Of course, you can read the blog post which is in the description. So this is quite interesting. Boak is basically a new mechanic where it is you can think of it as a buff, but really a player-specific status where it can also stack as well. And depending on how much Boak stack you have, then you can actually deal certain amount of AoE damage depending on how much allied leftover shield you have at the end of enemy's turn. So it's basically after an enemy attacks, if they still have some shield left on some of the axes, or even summons, I assume, then you do some AoE damage. So it incentivizes opponent to really decrease your number of the amount of shield, because otherwise they'll take a lot of damage. Yeah, so that's another way in which you can play shield, using shield to do AoE. So yeah, so this is as you see, shield might be getting more OP, but yeah, so that's one new mechanic. The other one about shield is guard. So guard is another mechanic where it's more about a buff on a particular axis, or actually I think it could be summon as well, where if let's say an axis has guard, then you can stack up shields on that axis, and then if another target, or let's say if another axis get hit, then the guard axis can actually block up to 50% of the damage taken by other allies. So sometimes, because for shield, if you just put all shields on one axis, and if your other axis get hit, then the shields are kind of wasted. But now at least you can get some value out of the shield. Yeah, so that's basically what guard does. Yep, and then another one that I must say is very interesting is reverse heal. So finally, a heal card can actually deal damage. So yeah, so of course not every heal card, but quite a number of heal cards, especially the ones with poison, because sometimes you just play the heal card just to put on poison, and you can't really you waste the heal. But now you can actually use reverse heal, where you can maybe able to target. Sometimes quite a lot of reverse heal card can target an enemy, and then you can actually deal damage as opposed to healing. Yeah, so it's just another way of playing heal cards now, right? Well, at least some of the heal cards. So yeah, I think it makes it more flexible. So some of the heal cards can effectively like a hybrid card or two cards in one. Right? If you target your ally, you'll heal. If you target the enemy, it will deal damage instead. Okay, and then there's another mechanic about steal, and then yeah, basically the stealing HP or stealing fragments has been around in the game, but there hasn't really been like a actual keyword and a mechanic around it. And so now there's actually, when you steal resources from your target, then there's something that if the target doesn't have something called alert, which is a buff, right? If it doesn't have an alert, then what happens is that then you get one cunning. So that's again another player specific buff or status. And yeah, it's basically that, okay, so if you steal, then what happens is you will apply an alert once you've stolen from, let's say, a target, right? So an enemy Axie. And then, of course, once the enemy Axie has alert, then you can't get cunning anymore, and the cunning is like a buff for a specific player, right? Not an Axie, right? It's for a player, and of course, the more cunning you have, actually, it increases the steal effects of your ally Axies. So it's actually pretty strong. I can imagine there'll be a steel, you know, based kind of team based on how many steel mechanics or steel cards there are. Not just cards, actually runes as well, and even charms, I think. So yeah, I can imagine there'll be a new archetype. At least people will try to make it work. It depends on how strong the cards are and whether there's enough steel mechanics to make it work. But yeah, it'll be interesting to experiment for sure. Okay, so there are other things that has changed, like summons, big change as well. Bubble Bomb got buff. Hex and Fear now just becomes Fear, right? So they remove the Hex effectively and just makes playing card, any card, will give you a confused. And then Vengeance, yeah, there's just a more new mechanics. I'm not going to go through everything, but Vengeance will be quite interesting. It's a very specific one, only for one card, I think. But what it does is that it's another new player status, and it's more to do with increasing the damage of the next ally attack, which scales with how much sort of vengeance stacks you have. So it could be good for some sort of combo, I would assume, like splash damage, that kind of thing. And finally, Silent Whisper has also changed. So now it's not just on poison, but any HP loss can be reversed, but with a cap of 50. And it's stack based, meaning like every time you trigger this, you will lose a stack. So yeah, pretty interesting. I think it's pretty good. Right? That Silence Whisper is not just now. It's not just a tech for poison, but just any HP loss. Okay. All right. Then another updates is Strawberry. So these are two cards or curse card. There are a lot of curse card that's changed as well, but I should highlight Strawberries because Strawberry is getting pretty strong. Now it has reverse heal, meaning you can keep the strawberry. So for those who don't know, strawberry used to be it's produced by Strawberry Shortcake, which is a two-cost card. And actually, I will talk more about it when I talk about Strawberry Shortcake. But effectively, it is a tool card that has zero cost, and you can deal 40, 50 or something damage, and it has retain, meaning you can keep it. And the good thing about it is then yeah, you can really have a lot of burst damage. You can keep the strawberry in your hand and deal a lot of burst damage for zero cost. So yeah, so this is something to look out for, and I'll talk more about it when I talk about strawberry shortcake later on. Goo also changes, and now it's quite a bit better. So the main change really is that opponent will lose one fragment when they draw goo, so that's number one. And now, yeah, if they play the fragment, then they will lose another fragment. Okay, but if they play it without another fragment, then instead of being exiled, it will discard, meaning they will still be in the opponent's deck. So, of course, still not sure how good it will be, just because there are a lot of teams that might not really care too much about fragments. But it will clock up their hand. Yeah, and there'll be, well, there is quite a lot of mechanics. Oh, not a lot of mechanics, but some cards that got buffed in terms of shuffling goose. So instead of one, you can shuffle one to two goose. This is where RNG comes in. But yeah, that definitely will increase the power of goo decks. Not sure it'll be viable still, but definitely power level has increased compared to before. Okay, Jinx also changed, buffed to 15 as opposed to 10 here. And then Also, it says received 1 to 3 bad luck. So instead of one per jinx, now it can be up to three. So this is again a lot of RNG, but also pretty crazy in the sense that on average you double the rate in which your bad luck yeah stacks up, and yeah it's just increase the damage of jinx by quite a bit. So of course games are going faster, fewer rounds, and so fewer, yeah, it'll be good to just move faster basically. Okay, so in terms of card changes, a lot of shields now have this Boac well, basically give Boac stacks. So that's the biggest change, I would say. In terms of shields, there are quite a number of shields card that has certain changes. One that's worth mentioning, I would say, is Hatsune. Hatsune basically now give taunt, so it's reworked. It applies taunt to the target basically. So the next turn when the ally actually, other than the target's attack, then apply taunt to the target. So yeah, basically another taunt card. Downside is that it is a tail card, so it will compete with tail cattail and ant. But the other thing is, well, because it can be targeted, so maybe you can put soon in another axis that you might not want to be taunted, but then you can put it on to another axis that can be taunted. So that could be quite flexible. Yeah, Kingfisher is worth mentioning, where it has this is the card that gives you the vengeance, and yeah, as I said, it could be possible to combo with some splash damage or something for like some combo. Teal Shell got nerfed. I'm not going to go into the detail, but effectively, yeah, it got nerfed in terms of the amount of shield it can gain, and now I think it's capped at 120. And Lotus, yeah, Lotus is actually another big change, I would say. Uh, yeah, one thing is that it still has the Purify 3, but now what you can do is to consume one Boac stack to heal uh, yeah, the same amount as the shield value, right? It's because if the base level shield value is 70, if you play initial, you can actually consume one Boac stack to yeah basically heal 70 and shield 70. So that I think is something to look out for because it's already Purify 3. It's already a very good card. And still nobody's playing it. So that's why I think they are buffing again. Okay, so next one, fear. Fear actually could also be something to build around because say balloon, cube bunny, caterpillars, those all change to okay. Target random enemy, not great, but on targets with fear, then you -1 fear, but then you deal 8% of the target max HP, and that is pretty significant. And that's as damage to all enemies, right? So yeah, that's very significant because effectively it deals 32 AoE, so that's effectively about 100 more damage. Of course, it's not easy because it targets a random enemy and also it has to be on target with fear because if the target doesn't have fear, then you don't deal this extra damage, but you still apply 3 fear. So yeah, but there is a bit of a change in fear mechanic where when the opponent plays a card, then it actually consumes one stack. So meaning the opponent can relatively easily remove the fear stacks if you're playing fear synergy. So that's yeah, I'm not sure whether it will work out, but definitely something to try. And then we have summons, different summons, or pretty much all the summons has changed. Main thing is that they now all have base stats, which is makes it a lot stronger. Just because before you play a summon, it doesn't do anything. Yeah, so like you don't have a particular immediate effect, but now they have base stat, either attack or heal or something. So meaning it already when you play the summon card, let's say you play. Mavis, then you already start to deal damage. It's 40 damage at the base level, and then it will also deal more damage at the end of your turn. So a lot of the effects is now at the end of your turn, meaning you're guaranteed to at least get one turn of value out of the summons. And of course, the summon itself can sometimes will block one attack anyway, so it can kind of use it as a shield and so there are a lot of upsides. So I feel like summon now is definitely a lot more viable. So Shiitake, like Mavis, and I think Clover is another one that I want to mention as well. Just because for Clover, it can deal damage at the okay. The tough part is that it only deals damage at the end of the enemy's turn, but it does deal 40 damage if it has one leaf. So that's pretty good as well. Yeah, so it's yeah, there's definitely quite a lot of support with summons and of course eggshell as well. Even though still not sure if it'll be played, but now eggshell shields the Axie as well as the summons, and it equals to the eggshell attack. So yeah, maybe it will work with all the AOE shield with summons. So I can see AOE shield summon will work not just in the rare era, but maybe beyond that as well. Okay, and Silent Whisper, as I said, has already changed in terms of how the HP loss kind of work. It doesn't have to be just poison, but that's not the main change. The main change is actually that now it's effectively like a new Tiny Turtle because it now has reverse heal, and you can target any ally or enemy. And if you do it on an enemy, and if you do initial, right? So imagine it's like Tiny Turtle, then it applies 2 sleep. Okay, of course, Tiny Turtle applies 3 sleep, but usually, it's really just the 2 that matters. Yeah, and the good part about it is that for Silence Whisper, yeah, you don't really apply sleep on it yourself, right? Because for Tiny Turtle, you do initial, you apply sleep on the opponent, but you also apply sleep on yourself. Uh, Whereas for Silent Whisper, you just apply 2 sleep without sleeping yourself. But also, if you want to, you can also just not do the reverse heal, not do the sleep thing. You can just heal and apply Silent Whisper as well. So it's a very flexible card, and it's just I can assume that it will probably be nerfed, but we'll see. And finally, for cards, have to talk about Strawberry Shortcake because I think it's this very high power level because now the base heal is nerfed to 40 just because it's so strong. But if you do parts evolution, if you evolve this part, it will go back to 50. Okay, if of course a 2 energy cost 50 heal is not the greatest, but it does give you 2 strawberries that equal the amount of the base heal. So even if 50, so 2 energy will be 150 heal. But of course, it's quite flexible because it can target any ally or enemy, meaning you can use 50 for healing and 100 for damage or whatever. So it's very flexible. But the other thing is that the stat can actually be further buffed to 63 because you can put a charm on as well, and that basically gives you close to 190 either damage or heal for 2 energy. So that's yeah, that can target any ally or enemy. And I can imagine this being very good for end game where you just want to burst through your opponent while keeping a lot of the burst damage at the end. So that's something to look out for sure. There definitely will be some experimentation on Strawberry Shortcake. Okay, and then runes changes, not gonna go for everything. So Heart of Ocean kind of change, but not too much. Endless Anger buffed a bit, now 10% damage in free mode. Leech actually is the biggest change, I feel, because now it doesn't do any shield stuff anymore. It just steals HP. Of course, it's a synergy now. And it gives 1 cocoon, and then yeah, this is where the RNG comes in as well. Then if you steal more than more than 15 HP, then you give +1 cocoon to other allies. But you don't really get to control this because this is a random 10 to 20 HP stealing, I think. And Gloomy Dice, of course, is being a dice, is of course the king of RNG. It's already have been a king of RNG since the beginning, and now basically what it does is that it at odds turns, it applies 1 to 6 fear to all enemy axes, and then to confuse cards, something I didn't mention is the confuse card now deal I think 5 HP damage or something. But then now with Gloomy Dice, it deals 1 to 6 times the damage to enemies. So again, a lot of variability here. Yeah, so this will be fun to play. Of course, it is a Mystic Rune, so maybe not a lot of casual player will play it, but yeah, a lot of pros will probably be quite frustrated playing this. It's already been a very RNG heavy kind of rune, and this now I think has more RNG. Or maybe less just because it's now all fear, right? Who knows? Okay, Soul Eater. Yeah, I put it here, but I'm not going to go through it just because I don't think it's good enough still, even though it's been reworked many, many times. But yeah. Sap's armor, I should really mention, is because now it doesn't do as well, I feel, because it doesn't have the bonus damage anymore, but instead it changes to reflect 15% damage. Yeah, so yeah, it doesn't really have the attack buff anymore. Shady Exchange is worth mentioning because now it actually heals and deals that AoE damage when you gain fragments. So every time you gain fragments, you deal a bit of damage. Not a lot, but still it can add up, especially if you play a lot of energy fragment gaining mechanics. So it could just be rune, it could be from charm, it could be from cards. And then Destiny Leaf, probably not going to mention, is it's basically they just remove the HP buff from summons. And yeah, Way of Plant also changed and kind of become the new Protector because Protector in Rare Era has been very good. 15% damage reduction in Rare is very good. But of course, yes, probably just too good. And now they nerfed the Protector to 10% damage reduction only from attacks. And said that Way of Plant now reworked to take also 10% from less 10% less from attacks, but also an additional 5% less if the axis has leaves. So of course, Way of Plant start with 2 leaves, so you already start with minus 15%, so which is pretty good. And okay, finally for runes, I should talk about Healing Pulse because this has been buffed. Before it's plus 20% heal, and now instead of the plus 20%, which now you don't have that, but now you have 30% splash heal, which is pretty interesting. Is that basically instead of just increasing the heal on that particular target, you splash heal. So you heal that, and then you also have 30% to heal the remaining Axie. That's not the only thing. It's because it also works with reverse heal, which means effectively it gives you can use it as splash damage, or you can see it as 30% splash damage for any reverse heal cards. And so, of course, Strawberry Shortcake would be one, and also Cucumber Slice as well could be another one, because the overheal still grants shield and deal damage. And then now it makes it more consistent as well, is because it deals damage. The overheal deals damage to the lowest HP enemy. So, definitely a lot more yeah, definitely a lot more consistent just because you can just target the same one as opposed to random ones. So definitely looking forward to seeing Healing Pulse with Strawberry Shortcake. Yeah, especially I haven't really get into the parts evolution yet, but the Evolve Innocent Lamb give an additional 10% stats. And so basically, it'll give you another copy of Strawberry Shortcake that has even higher stats. But of course, it doesn't copy the charm. So still, yeah, basically two copy of Strawberry Shortcake could be pretty good. Okay, so finally for charm changes, this is where there's really not much in terms of existing charm. So Bug Energy, Drink M, not sure anyone really used it now. They don't have the minus 50% attack anymore, but it grants the target 15 shield, which is synergistic to the stealing mechanic. So yeah, because it allows you to like the pure damage attacks to steal the shield. So it's another way of stealing. So that's just if you are thinking about stealing, so this could be a bit of a synergy. And then Secret Cocoon now changed to +1 Cocoon to ally Axie as opposed to +2 Cocoon on that Axie. Yeah, so this just changes the way where you put the charm, I think. As usually you want to put the cocoon at a particular axis, so now it makes it harder. And finally, I would say Reptiles Energy Drink M also may become more viable because being a Mystic Charm, it really doesn't do much. And now it effectively says it lose about 10% HP and gain about 10 Blood Spike. And that's, I would say, pretty significant compared to before. Yeah, so I would say for some things like Tri Spike, it could work pretty well. And oh yeah, that's the blood pack is definitely worth mentioning. Not much change other than going from 3 to 4, but still can still be put on square teeth. So yeah, of course 3 to 4 is for sure a good change just because it's been too good. And finally, there are some of the new charms. I'm not going to go through to like specifically, but there are some new charms that was curse specific, meaning it can only be put on curse cards. So yeah, basically makes curse a bit better in certain eras, but Not sure if they are significant in terms of the power level. And then there's another charm called Purifying Incense, which gives more. It's quite a flexible card. It allows you to purify or cleanse, depending on, or actually dispel, depending on the situation. So that's good. But having said that, each effect is relatively weak, so I'm not sure if it will make the cut. And then there are other Mystic Charms as well. So Wooden Idol is another one that actually gives you Purify 1 and plus 10% stat. The only thing is that it can only be put on 2 energy cost cards. So, and the Purify 1 is only if the card is in the draw pile or in hand. So you have to keep it. But then if you keep it, then every turn you actually Purify 1. So that's pretty good. Yeah, so finally, I should talk about discount coupon. So this is, I would say, one of the charms. It's a Mystic Charm, 4 PP, but it can only be put on 2 energy attack cards. So very, very, very specific, but still a lot of very good 2 energy attack cards. And what it does is that it minus 50% attack, sure, but it minus 1 energy cost, meaning it just instead of 2 energy, it becomes 1 energy, and it makes it so much better. I would say for some cards that relies mostly on the card text. So one angle is like Rage, where Little Brown, Shiva, and I was just like imagine those are just 1 cost. Or just Bleed with Chubby. 1 cost Chubby is pretty good. And of course, there are a lot of feather stuff, right? Bonus damage, where Winghorn, Feather Fan, or even Death Shower. Those mostly rely on the amount of hits you do, right, or amount of feather dagger you get. So the actual attack, the attack value from Winghorn doesn't really matter too much. The minus 50% doesn't really matter too much. And also different type of high damage scaling, like Gila, where imagine 1 energy Gila. Of course, Gila, it has a certain, I think it's a 40 base value, but that's not the main thing. Of course, the scaling is mostly from the poison stack, or even for Beach, it will be from the amount of HP you have. So different type of scaling. 2 energy become 1 energy just makes it a lot easier to play. So I feel like discount coupon, could be a game changer for a lot of builds where it will just be a lot stronger with all these strong 2 cost attack cards. Okay, so that is pretty much it. For this update, I would make another video for the parts evolution, because each part also basically has an upgraded version, and some of them definitely is worth talking about. For now, definitely a lot of new mechanics to play and try out. Just wait for 3rd January where the patch is really out, and then we can actually try things out. Of course, now is the time where, we just have fun theory crafting, and let's just hope that season 7 will be, another wave of onboarding. Given the current market situation, hopefully there'll be more people knowing about Axie and just crypto in general, and coming to Web3, finding out about new games, and Axie will for sure be one of the new games that people will, or one of the games that people will try in Web3. So, and let's just hope we do a good job with just balancing it, just because I feel like there are probably some quite OP interactions and stuff. So if we get those fixed, then it should be a pretty good season. So let's just hope it'll be a good season. Of course, for pros, it's a different story, because now with parts evolution, I'm not going to talk too much about it in this video, but it just makes the meta shift maybe a bit slower, just because it's harder to get so-called optimal axes. Okay, but that is for a topic for another video. So that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.